In Joseph Murphy's model, you possess two levels of mind: the conscious, analytical mind and the subconscious realm of habit, emotion, and automatic action. One chooses, the other repeats. Tonight you stand between them. You have already felt this division. You decide to change, yet an older pattern returns. You speak new intentions in daylight, then wake inside the same reactions, fears, and limits. That contradiction is real. It is not proof that you are weak. It is evidence that something deeper has been carrying instructions you did not consciously write. Much of it was inherited. Much was repeated. All of it was learned. You were told that change depends on willpower, that you must struggle against yourself until discipline wins. But your deeper transformation begins elsewhere. It begins when resistance grows quiet, when the analytical gate softens, and when a new idea can descend beneath argument into feeling. Sleep brings you near that gate. Atkinson presented mental power as trainable and directable, not as a mysterious accident. Hanel taught that concentrated, orderly thought comes before lasting change in outward conditions. You are not being asked to believe blindly. You are being invited to practice deliberately. That is why these words reached you now. Some part of you is tired of living from old commands. Some part of you knows that the life you repeat by day is shaped by what you accept in the hidden hours. Stay with this journey gently. Let each idea settle without force. You do not awaken the sleeping giant through violence, but through clear impressions repeated until they become identity. Tonight, you begin moving from unconscious inheritance to conscious creation, and before you can redirect your life, you must first discover the river already carrying it. In 1963, Joseph Murphy placed a startling proposition before the world. While you sleep, another level of your mind remains awake. Imagine his words arriving in a quiet room, beneath a shaded lamp. As the day's noise finally recedes, the body grows still. The analytical mind loosens its grip. Yet beneath that silence, a vast current continues moving through you. It never stops. Murphy describes two levels of mind. The conscious level examines, compares, chooses, and doubts, while the subconscious level governs your habits, emotions, reactions, and automatic patterns. The conscious mind pauses. The subconscious continues. This is the secret hidden inside every night of your life. You enter sleep believing the day has ended, but the deeper current carries its final impressions forward. Nothing is truly dropped. A fear repeated before sleep does not simply vanish when your eyes close. A resentment rehearsed in darkness can become an instruction, moving beneath awareness long after conscious resistance disappears. The same is true of hope. A chosen conviction, repeated with feeling, can also enter that current. It can begin shaping automatic responses, while the surface mind is no longer arguing against it. That opens every door. Your subconscious is not awakening for the first time tonight. You are awakening to the fact that it has always been active, receiving emotional impressions and carrying them into your habits. The giant already stirs. It stirred beneath every repeated belief. It stirred beneath every private expectation, every silent conclusion, and every sentence you accepted as true about yourself. You may have called it fate. You may have called it personality. Much of it is simply accumulated direction. The current remembers. Murphy's distinction is crucial because the conscious and subconscious levels do not perform the same work. The conscious level can reason about a command, but the subconscious level moves according to the command impressed upon it. The surface debates, the depth obeys. This does not mean every passing thought becomes reality. A fleeting idea has little force beside a conviction repeatedly charged with emotion, especially when it is welcomed during a receptive state. Repetition deepens the channel. Each night, the final movement of your attention pours into familiar inner pathways. If you fall asleep replaying rejection, the current receives rejection as its direction. If you enter sleep expecting failure, that expectation moves downward. It begins influencing what you notice, how you react, and what feels natural when morning comes. The instruction becomes automatic. This is why the moments before sleep carry unusual power. Your conscious defenses soften, your analysis becomes less aggressive, and the border between deliberate thought and accepted impression grows thin. You are still choosing. But now the choice sinks deeper. The final ideas you entertain are no longer merely comments about your life. They become directions given to the machinery beneath it. Most nights pass accidentally. You review what wounded you. You imagine what may go wrong tomorrow. You conduct silent arguments with figures who are not even in the room. Then sleep takes you. The subconscious receives the emotional tone, not your excuse for producing it. It does not argue that you were only worrying. only remembering or only preparing for disappointment. It receives the direction. Murphy insists that this deeper level does not analyze instructions as your conscious mind does. It accepts dominant, emotionally repeated impressions and begins expressing them through habitual and automatic activity. The current does not negotiate. This may feel unsettling at first, yet the same law that preserved an unwanted pattern also permits a chosen pattern to be formed. The prison and the passage operate through the same principle. Accidental thought reinforces the old direction. Deliberate thought begins cutting a new one. You are not helpless. William Walker Atkinson presents mental power as trainable and directable, not as a strange gift arriving by chance. Your attention gains force when you stop scattering it and begin applying it with intention. Direction creates momentum. Atkinson's insight removes superstition from inner change. You do not wait for a mysterious force to select you. You train the force already moving through you. You participate consciously. The drifter reacts, the navigator directs. This is the identity sleep now offers you. You are the navigator of the midnight current, not a piece of debris carried wherever yesterday's emotion happens to flow. Hold that closely. A navigator does not command the river to disappear. You work with its movement, giving it a destination before darkness carries you beyond conscious control. That destination begins as thought. Why have your nights repeated your days? Why have old emotions returned without invitation? Why does a chosen thought before sleep matter so deeply? Because repetition becomes familiarity, and familiarity becomes automatic direction. The subconscious follows what has been emotionally established, not what you occasionally announce without conviction. Words alone are shallow. Feeling gives them depth. Repetition gives them movement. Sleep removes much of the conscious interference that normally breaks their descent. Then the current carries them. Charles F. Hannell emphasizes that concentrated, orderly inner thought precedes durable outward change. The outer condition is not where lasting direction begins. It begins in the sustained arrangement of your inner attention. Disorder scatters. Concentration gathers. This is not strain. You do not need to force your mind into submission or wrestle with every image that appears before sleep. Force creates turbulence. Instead, you select one clear inner direction and return to it calmly. You allow its meaning to become familiar enough that the subconscious can receive it without conflict. Calm repetition penetrates. Perhaps your chosen direction is safety. Perhaps it is confidence, restoration, forgiveness, or a deep certainty that tomorrow contains possibilities you can recognize and use. Keep it simple. A long speech can awaken analysis. A short statement, inwardly felt and gently repeated, can move beneath analysis into the automatic level. The conscious mind chooses. The subconscious carries. If you repeat, "I am safe within myself," while inwardly rehearsing catastrophe, the emotional current receives catastrophe. The words point one way, but the feeling steers another. Feeling is the rudder. Your task is not to manufacture violent emotion. It is to let your chosen thought become believable, quiet, and natural enough to rest within. Naturalness is powerful. The subconscious responds to what feels established. This is why an old limitation can survive even after you consciously reject it. Beneath the rejection, it may still feel familiar. Familiar is not permanent. You can create a new familiarity through orderly repetition. Each night can deepen the chosen direction until the former reaction loses its authority. The old current weakens. At first, opposing thoughts may appear. They are not signs of failure. They are traces of the previous direction, still moving through familiar channels. Do not follow them. Return without argument. The conscious mind often believes change requires conflict. But the deeper mind learns through impression, feeling, and repetition. Resistance shouts. Direction persists. Tonight, therefore, holds more than rest. It holds the transition between what you consciously review and what your automatic mind continues rehearsing after awareness fades. This threshold is active. What you carry across it matters because your subconscious keeps working upon the patterns already impressed. It influences your impulses, expectations, bodily tension, emotional reflexes, and the choices that seem spontaneous tomorrow. The invisible becomes habitual. Then habit appears outwardly as circumstance. You meet the day through the direction established within, often without recognizing the source. That is the hidden consequence. A mind trained toward danger discovers evidence of danger. A mind increasingly directed toward possibility begins recognizing openings it once ignored. The world may look unchanged. The navigator has changed. And that is enough to alter the journey. Tonight can become a turning point, not because midnight contains magic, but because you no longer surrender the current to whatever emotion happened to dominate the day. You choose the final direction. Right now, as these words enter the quiet space before sleep, you stand closer to the deeper current than you did during the noise of daylight. Enter it deliberately. Do not ask the giant to awaken. Recognize that it is already awake, already moving, already carrying whatever you repeatedly impress upon it. You are awakening instead. You are not the helpless passenger. You are the navigator of the midnight current, and tonight your hand returns to the direction of your own inner life. But before you can redirect the current, you must discover what has been steering it in your name. Some of the beliefs ruling your life were planted before you were old enough to question them. You felt their roots long before you understood their names. Now they appear as fear, scarcity, shame, and the strange impulse to ruin what you desperately want. But they are not you. A child receives impressions as soil receives seed. A repeated warning becomes expectation. A disappointed face becomes shame, and an authority figure's anger becomes a private law about what is safe to express. You did not examine it, you absorbed it. Perhaps love seemed conditional. Perhaps money always arrived surrounded by tension, or success invited criticism. Perhaps you learned that being visible was dangerous, that mistakes withdrew affection, or that your needs created trouble. The soil did not judge, it received. Here is the tender place beneath so many recurring patterns. You keep blaming the harvest because you cannot remember the planting. You see hesitation and call yourself weak. You see self-sabotage and call yourself broken. That judgment feeds it. James Allen compares the mind to cultivated ground. His insight is severe but liberating. Whether tended deliberately or left unattended, the inner soil continues producing. Neglect does not leave it empty. Something always grows. Allen also sees a progression that is easy to miss. Thought crystallizes into habit, and habit eventually hardens into circumstance. What begins as an inward impression can become a repeated action, then a familiar result that appears to confirm the original impression. The crop proves nothing. If you expect rejection, you may hide your honest voice. That concealment weakens connection, and the weakened connection seems to prove that intimacy never lasts. The original seed creates behavior, the behavior shapes conditions, and the conditions appear to validate the seed. This is how roots hide. The fearful thought says, "You are unsafe." Your withdrawal then creates distance, and that distance answers, "Yes, you are." Yet the answer is not fate speaking. It is an old planting reproducing its own kind. The seed repeats itself. This does not mean every passing thought enters the soil and becomes destiny. A moment of doubt has little power when it receives no sustained attention, but a thought repeatedly nourished by emotion begins to descend beneath conscious argument. Feeling waters it. Joseph Murphy describes the subconscious as responsive to accepted suggestion. Repetition gives an impression familiarity, while emotion gives it force. Once received deeply, the subconscious tends to express that impression without first asking whether it is fair, current, or beneficial. It simply grows. Your conscious reasoning may say abundance is possible, while the deeper soil still carries years of alarm around money. You may affirm that love is safe, while your body prepares for abandonment whenever closeness appears. The spoken wish is new, but the buried expectation is established. Roots outrun wishes. This is why effort sometimes feels strangely divided. The surface reaches forward while the soil produces according to older instructions. The conscious desire asks for change. The accepted impression preserves continuity. Desire requests, assumption directs. You may then condemn yourself for lacking discipline. Yet condemnation is not cultivation. It presses the old seed deeper by attaching fresh emotion to the very pattern you want to release. Shame is fertilizer. Every time you say, "This is just who I am," you turn a recurring crop into an identity. You stop seeing the planting and begin worshipping the result. What was learned becomes sacred simply because it is familiar. Familiarity is not truth. Why does fear return when the danger is gone? Why does scarcity remain when new possibilities appear? Why does shame speak with the voice of authority? Because the soil remembers repetition more readily than it recognizes justice. It carries what was impressed, not necessarily what was deserved. Childhood interpretation can survive adulthood because the root remains untouched, while the visible behavior is repeatedly cut back. The root stays alive. You may promise never to sabotage another opportunity. Then the opportunity arrives, visibility increases, and an ancient warning awakens. Attention brings danger. You delay, become distracted, create conflict, or suddenly decide the opportunity was never right. The harvest returns. This is not proof of defect. It is evidence of consistency within the subconscious. The buried assumption is producing exactly what it has been trained to produce, even when that production conflicts with your conscious plans. The pattern is obedient. Murphy's teaching becomes important here. The subconscious does not pause to investigate the age of an impression before expressing it. It does not ask whether the voice belonged to a frightened parent, a careless teacher, or a wounded authority figure. Acceptance gives it roots, yet accepted does not mean permanent. Soil can hold an old seed for years, but it can also receive another planting. The same responsiveness that maintained fear can establish courage when courage is deliberately impressed with feeling and repetition. The law is impartial. The neglected soil reproduces the past. The cultivated soil receives a chosen future. The first is unconscious inheritance. The second is conscious participation. Now responsibility changes meaning. Responsibility is not blame for what entered you before discernment developed. It is your present ability to recognize what continues receiving nourishment. Fault belongs to condemnation. Questions open chambers. You can stop feeding it. Notice how often an old belief borrows the word always. You always fail. You always lose. You always ruin good things. Such language pretends a repeated harvest is an eternal law. It is only repetition. The moment you recognize this, space appears between your identity and your conditioning. You are not the fear growing in the field. You are not the scarcity, the shame, or the reflex that pulls away when goodness approaches. You are the discerning cultivator. That identity carries no violence. You do not attack the soil for receiving what was planted. You approach it with clear attention, because hostility toward your own mind is merely another harmful seed. The cultivator observes calmly. Christian D. Larson teaches that your inner forces become constructive when thought and feeling are trained toward a chosen ideal. Thought alone points toward the new planting. Feeling gives it life, and deliberate training keeps you from watering the opposite crop each day. Direction matters. If your chosen ideal is security, you do not merely repeat the word while rehearsing disaster. You begin allowing the feeling of steadiness to accompany the thought. You return to it patiently, especially when the old expectation demands familiar fear. Gentleness becomes discipline. Correspondence links worlds. The cultivator chooses. The old impression says, protect the wound. The chosen ideal says, prepare the soil. This choice is quiet. You are not required to erase every memory tonight. You are required to stop confusing memory with identity. A buried message may explain your reaction, but it does not possess the authority to define your future. Explanation is not allegiance. Before sleep, the conscious guard softens. The soil becomes especially receptive to what is repeated with feeling. This is not a time to replay accusations against yourself, because the final emotional impressions of the day can nourish the very roots you intend to weaken. Choose what descends. Let the chosen ideal become simple enough to feel. Safety can be learned, worth can be received, abundance can be approached without apology, and love can exist without the constant expectation of loss. Plant gently tonight. When the old crop appears tomorrow, do not kneel before it. See it as evidence of yesterday's cultivation, not a prophecy of tomorrow. Each calm refusal to condemn yourself removes nourishment from an ancient root. Each new feeling matters. Right now, your inner soil is not demanding perfection. It is waiting for a clearer instruction, repeated until the new impression becomes familiar, the new habit becomes natural, and the new circumstance can finally emerge. But look deeper. If these patterns are only a harvest, what hidden design keeps producing the same crop? You can renovate every room of your life and still remain trapped inside the same invisible blueprint. You can change your work, your habits, your surroundings, even the face beside you, yet find the same old limitations waiting behind new walls. Something deeper keeps rebuilding them. It is not bad luck. It is not punishment. It is an inner design repeating itself through your expectations, permissions, fears, and silent conclusions about who you are. Most will never see this. They attack the visible structure while protecting the plan that produced it. They work harder, speak brighter words, and wonder why the same emotional rooms keep appearing. The blueprint remains. Every recurring circumstance points toward an assumption. Beneath the surface, you carry quiet measurements for how much love feels safe, how much success feels deserved, and how much freedom you permit yourself to hold. Those measurements shape what gets built. You may consciously desire abundance while subconsciously expecting loss. You may ask for intimacy while assuming closeness ends in rejection. You may seek recognition while secretly believing visibility brings danger. The wish speaks loudly. The premise speaks first. This is why forceful positive thinking often fails. A sentence repeated at the surface cannot easily alter an identity accepted beneath it. You declare, "I am worthy," while an older specification quietly reads, "Worth must be earned through struggle." The old specification wins, not because it is true, not because you are weak. It wins because your subconscious treats accepted identity as an instruction, not an opinion. It builds accordingly. Thomas Troward saw this with unusual clarity. In his mental science framework, outward expression does not emerge from disconnected chance. It proceeds from an originating inner pattern, then takes shape through thought, response, expectation, and action. The visible follows the invisible. The structure follows the plan. This does not mean you consciously request every painful event. It means your established self-concept influences what you notice, tolerate, avoid, repeat, and consider possible. It sets the boundaries within which your life is allowed to form. The distinction holds wisdom. Blame says you deserve the wound. Awareness says you can revise the design. Blame imprisons the architect. Awareness returns the pencil. You were handed many of your first specifications before you could inspect them. A disappointed expression taught you what earned approval. A withdrawal of affection taught you what happened when you spoke freely. Repeated tension taught your nervous system which rooms were unsafe. You adapted. Those adaptations became internal requirements. You learned to keep the ceiling low, the exits close, and your desires hidden behind walls. Then you forgot that these choices began as protection. Now they feel personal. You call them personality. You say, "That is simply how I am." But much of what you call yourself is only a borrowed blueprint preserved through repetition. You did not draft it. It may carry the measurements of an anxious parent, the restrictions of a wounded household, or the expectations of a world that rewarded your silence. Yet because the plan lives inside you, its results appear to confirm it. The design predicts rejection. Your reactions anticipate it. Those reactions help recreate the distance you feared. Then the blueprint says, "See, this is the hidden circle." An assumption produces behavior, behavior influences circumstance, and circumstance appears to prove the assumption. The structure becomes evidence for the plan that built it. James Allen connects character and circumstance through sustained patterns of thought. His point is not that every event exposes your entire being. His deeper point is that persistent inner tendencies eventually express themselves through choices, habits, relationships, and conditions. Thought becomes character. Character enters circumstance. Yet Allen refuses despair. The pattern is sustained so the pattern can be changed. What has been reinforced through inner repetition can be interrupted through conscious direction. That is your opening. But first, you must stop confusing resistance with revision. When you fight an unwanted pattern all day, your attention still circles its specifications. You keep reviewing the very design you claim to reject. Attention authorizes construction. You say, "I must not fail," and failure remains the central chamber. You say, "I cannot be abandoned again," and abandonment remains built into every expectation. The conscious mind pushes against the wall, while the subconscious keeps reading its dimensions. Force preserves focus. Revision changes identity. Why does the same pain return beneath different names? Why does greater effort sometimes produce only deeper exhaustion? Why does the future keep resembling the past? Because the old architect still signs the plans. Your surface desire asks for a new result. Your assumed identity demands familiar proportions. Until those two agree, you experience effort above and repetition below. This conflict drains you. You attempt to enter a larger life while still identifying as someone who must remain small. You seek ease while taking pride in struggle. You ask to receive while defining goodness through self-denial. The contradiction gets built. Troward's teaching in The Hidden Power sharpens this truth. Creative power becomes useful when consciously directed instead of unconsciously obstructed. The power itself is not absent. It is being routed through assumptions you rarely examine. You already possess it. Every expectation directs it. Every emotional permission directs it. Every repeated inner statement about someone like me gives the hidden builders another instruction. Fate binds sleepers. Practice opens doors. For years you may have reacted to completed rooms. You saw a cold relationship and felt unlovable. You saw delay and felt powerless. You saw another closed door and decided the world had measured you correctly. But the visible is downstream from identity. It is a late-stage expression. You cannot fully revise your life by arguing with what has already been constructed. You return to the plans. This is where shallow affirmation breaks down. It places golden lettering over a load-bearing belief and calls the work complete. Yet the deeper premise remains untouched, carrying the weight of the old identity. Decoration is not redesign. If your hidden premise says, love requires performance, praise will make you suspicious. If it says wealth threatens belonging, opportunity will trigger retreat. If it says safety depends on invisibility, success will feel like exposure. You will call this sabotage. It is actually obedience. Your subconscious obeys the identity it believes protects you. It does not oppose your happiness. It preserves the design associated with survival. See the tenderness there. The old blueprint is not your enemy. It is outdated protection. It keeps rebuilding yesterday because yesterday is the only structure it has been authorized to trust. War will not free it. When you condemn the pattern, you deepen the shame attached to it. When you observe it without worshipping it, you separate identity from instruction. You begin to recognize, this is a plan I carry, not the truth I am. That transforms the path. The false self says, these walls define me. The awakened self says, these walls reveal what I once assumed. One is trapped inside the structure, the other studies its design. You are the revising architect. This identity is not a flattering phrase. It is a transfer of authority. You cease begging completed circumstances to tell you who you are. You decide upstream. Tonight, as you approach sleep, the conscious guard grows quieter. The plans usually hidden beneath noise become easier to sense. You may notice an old sentence, a familiar contraction, or an image of what you expect tomorrow to bring. Do not wrestle it. Look beneath it. Notice the identity implied by the expectation. A fear of being overlooked may conceal the assumption that your presence carries no weight. The event is visible. The identity is structural. Then revise from the deepest point. Not I will force everyone to notice me, but my presence belongs here. Not I will never lose, but I remain whole while life changes. Identity sets dimensions. Let the new premise feel quiet. It does not need strain because certainty rarely shouts. The old blueprint was installed through repetition and emotional acceptance. The new one enters through the same inner doorway. Starting now, stop measuring yourself by rooms built from borrowed plans. Circumstance is not your final authority. History is not your architect. You are. As sleep approaches, hold the identity that permits the life you desire. Let it become more familiar than the wound, more natural than the defense, and more authoritative than yesterday's evidence. The hidden power responds to the design you accept. The blueprint can change. To redraw that blueprint, we must recover what earlier teachers understood about the threshold between thought and form. Stay awake for that threshold, even as you fall asleep. Human beings learn to navigate the inner world long before modern life taught them to distrust the compass. Somewhere beneath tonight's noise, you still remember that direction does not arrive from outside. It rises from within. Your ancestors understood this. They discovered that a quiet mind could receive direction. Directed prayer could hold it steady, and inward attention could keep it from being lost. These were practical disciplines, not passive wishes. Silence was not an escape from life. It was the place where the compass stopped trembling long enough to reveal the true direction of thought. Attention became the hand that steadied it. Then the forms multiplied. Ceremonies gathered around the practice, explanations hardened into superstition, and the instrument itself disappeared beneath decoration. You were taught to admire the case while forgetting the compass inside it. The direction remained. Christian D. Larson recognized this danger. He insisted that the enduring spirit of a principle matters more than the forms built around it. A ceremony can point toward truth, but it cannot replace your inward contact with truth. The form repeats. The spirit directs. This nuance shifts your world. When you cling to the outer form, you wait for the correct words, the correct symbol, or the correct authority to give you power. When you live from the inner principle, your attention becomes deliberate. You stop waiting. Older contemplative traditions trained this capacity through stillness, prayer, remembrance, and sustained inward observation. The words differed, but the discipline remained recognizable. You withdrew attention from confusion and returned it to what you held sacred. That return was the practice. Prayer, in its deeper sense, was never helpless pleading. It was the deliberate orientation of consciousness toward a chosen reality. The lips might speak, but the inward direction carried the force. A distracted prayer points nowhere. A directed prayer establishes orientation. This is why quiet mattered. Quiet did not force the world to obey you. It allowed you to notice where your own compass had already been pointing. Most never notice. You may say you desire peace while rehearsing conflict each night. You may ask for abundance while repeatedly feeling the certainty of lack. The spoken request points north, but the emotional habit pulls south. Feeling gives weight. Attention selects the direction, yet feeling determines how firmly that direction enters you. A thought touched once is a passing movement. A thought repeatedly charged with feeling becomes an established bearing. Then habit follows. This is the recoverable core beneath the old language. Attention gives direction, feeling gives weight, and repetition established orientation until the subconscious accepts that orientation as familiar. Familiarity becomes command. Charles F. Harnell later translated this ancient discipline into the language of concentration. For Harnell, concentration was not strained staring or mental violence. It was the organization of mental energy around a definite ideal. The ideal mattered. A compass is useful only because it refers to a stable direction. In the same way, concentration becomes powerful when your mind is organized around something definite rather than scattered among competing desires. Vagueness weakens orientation. Clarity steadies it. The undisciplined mind reacts to every disturbance. The disciplined mind returns to its chosen direction. Poverty counts coins, clouds veil heaven. That contrast is ancient. You do not become disciplined by never wandering. You become disciplined by returning without surrendering to frustration. Each return teaches the subconscious what matters. Return is instruction. Harnell understood that mental energy gathers around sustained attention. What you revisit acquires structure within you, while what you neglect loses influence. Concentration, therefore, shapes more than a moment of thought. It shapes expectancy. William Walker Atkinson carried the principle further through attention, will, expectation, and repeated practice. He treated mental influence as lawful and trainable, not as a favor reserved for the unusually gifted. Your inward direction changes through use. You train it. Attention chooses what enters the center of awareness. Will keeps the direction from being abandoned at the first interruption. Expectation prepares the subconscious to recognize and reproduce the chosen pattern. Practice makes it normal. This is not magic. Magic promises results without inner participation, while discipline reveals the participation already occurring. A promise flatters you. A law requires you. Here the teaching was distorted. Inner responsibility became confused with blame, as though every wound were consciously selected and every hardship deserved. That confusion turns a liberating principle into cruelty. Responsibility is not blame. Blame looks backward for someone to condemn. Responsibility looks inward for the direction you can choose now. Anxiety counts obstacles. Plans arrange steps. You are participating already. Your subconscious does not punish you for having fear. It receives repeated impressions and organizes familiar responses around them. It follows the direction most consistently reinforced. This is impersonal. If fear has dominated your inward attention, that does not make you guilty. It means the compass has been repeatedly trained toward danger, often before you understood what was happening. What has been trained can be retrained. Now you understand. Modern life teaches you to seek direction through status, approval, prediction, and constant reaction. Each external signal tries to seize your attention and declare itself important. Soon, your inner compass appears unreliable because you rarely allow it to settle. Noise becomes authority, yet the compass is not broken. It is surrounded by competing instructions. Every repeated image, emotional rehearsal, and inward conversation contributes to its orientation. You are always directing. This is why mental discipline was obscured so easily. An undirected mind searches outside itself for certainty. An inwardly directed mind can receive guidance without surrendering its authority. The difference is immense. Larson's emphasis on spirit over empty form protects you from superstition. Harnell's discipline of concentration protects you from scattered desire. Atkinson's laws of attention, expectation, will, and practice protect you from vague wishing. Together, they restore direction. You are not the helpless passenger of your conditioned mind. You are the keeper of inner direction. That identity carries responsibility, but it also returns the authority you were trained to abandon. Hold it calmly. Tonight, notice what direction your final thoughts take before sleep. You do not need to fight every unwanted thought or force yourself into perfect stillness. You only need to return deliberately to the orientation you choose. The return matters. Choose a definite inner direction and let your feeling agree with it. Do not merely repeat words of peace while secretly preparing for conflict. Let the statement and the sensation point together. Congruence gives weight. Then repeat without strain. Repetition is not begging, and it is not an attempt to persuade a hostile universe. It is the steady act of teaching your subconscious what direction now deserves familiarity. The compass learns. At first, the old direction may pull strongly. Habit always feels persuasive because repetition has made it familiar. Familiar does not mean true, it means practiced. Your task is not to hate the old orientation. Hatred feeds it with attention and emotional weight. Your task is to choose again, then remain with the new direction long enough for it to become inwardly natural. That is mastery. Right now, the forgotten instrument within you is responding. Each calm return weakens the authority of unconscious repetition and strengthens the direction you consciously accept. You are not searching for the compass anymore. You are holding it. Why does your conscious resistance soften as sleep approaches? Why does repetition at that hour carry unusual weight? Yet direction alone is not enough. Why does the borderland of sleep make an impression travel deeper? The oldest prayer inside you may not be spoken in words at all. It may be the faint warmth you protect when the outer world grows dark, and every familiar certainty falls silent. Something still burns there. You feel it before sleep. Beneath the day's noise, beneath remembered mistakes and unfinished conversations, an inward ember waits for your recognition. It does not demand force, it asks for shelter. Few ever hear this. Prayer is not the desperate cry of a powerless self toward a distant authority. It is the quiet acceptance of a reality until that reality begins to glow within you. Begging announces separation, acceptance announces possession. This is why anxious prayer so often exhausts you. You name what you desire, but inwardly rehearse its absence. Your words ask for warmth while your attention keeps feeding the cold. The ember receives both. Your subconscious does not respond only to the sentence you repeat. It receives the meaning you privately accept, especially when emotion gives that meaning heat. A phrase without inward assent is ash. Feeling makes it living. Joseph Murphy describes prayer as the deliberate impression of a desired reality upon the subconscious. You do not plead as though truth remains far away. You accept it inwardly as already present, already stirring, already becoming natural to you. This shifts the whole. Suppose you desire peace. Repeating the word while anticipating tomorrow's conflict keeps the old fire alive. But entering the feeling of peace, even gently, gives your deeper mind a different ember to preserve. The words are not magic. Their accepted meaning matters. Your conscious mind can pronounce confidence while your body tightens with dread. It can recite health while contemplating disease every waking hour. It can say abundance while secretly expecting loss. The deeper conviction wins. That is not punishment. It is mental continuity. Whatever receives your repeated attention and emotional agreement becomes easier for your automatic mind to sustain. Fire follows fuel. Before sleep, the fuel changes. The arguments of the day weaken, and the restless part of you loses its grip. You no longer need to overpower resistance because resistance is already becoming quiet. Now the ember is reachable. Murphy emphasizes this threshold because the conscious guard relaxes there. A simple impression can remain without being challenged by every old objection. You are not trying to force belief. You are letting a chosen reality rest warmly inside you. Strain smothers it. Choose a scene so simple that your mind does not need to labor. Perhaps you feel the relief of a matter resolved, the steadiness of restored health, or the gratitude of living with greater harmony. Let the feeling arrive before explanation. Keep it gentle. You are not manufacturing emotional intensity. You are allowing inward agreement. There is a difference between feeding a flame and setting the whole room ablaze. Quiet warmth endures. The old mental science writers understand this distinction. Thomas Troward teaches that mental causation begins with an originating idea, which is then received and expressed through corresponding channels. The idea comes first. Expression follows its nature. The origin matters. A fearful idea, repeatedly accepted, influences what you notice and how you react. A constructive idea, inwardly received, begins seeking expression through choices, expectations, posture, speech, and action. The inner ember finds available fuel. This is not fantasy. It does not mean every event is secretly your fault. Conflict seeks victory. Silence gathers power. You are learning participation. Nor does an inward assumption excuse harmful conduct or erase practical duty. You still make the call, keep the appointment, offer the apology, take the medicine, and perform the necessary work. Inner acceptance aligns action. It does not replace action. The dreamer avoids. The guardian responds. Medical care remains medical care. Ethical responsibility remains sacred. Your bedtime contemplation simply helps your automatic thought and behavior cooperate with what your waking life requires. That cooperation is powerful. Wallace D. Wattles presses this principle into the subject of health. He advises holding a constructive conception of health while acting consistently with health, rather than continually dwelling upon disease. His point is not denial, it is direction. You can acknowledge a condition without building your entire inward life around it. You can receive treatment without making fear your nightly prayer. You can face facts while refusing to feed them with endless catastrophic imagination. Attention is fuel. If symptoms require professional care, seek it. If your circumstances require practical change, make it. Then, when night comes, stop rehearsing helplessness as though repetition were protection. It is not protection. The subconscious learns through what is repeatedly made vivid and familiar. When you continually picture defeat, your reactions prepare around defeat. When you accept steadiness, your behavior gradually organizes around steadiness. Vision magnetizes steps. Control clenches life. Troward's originating idea is not merely an attractive thought. It is the beginning of a pattern that seeks embodiment through the channels available to it. Your habits, decisions, and emotional reflexes become those channels. The ember enters everything. This is why feeling carries such importance. Emotion makes an idea personally convincing. It tells your deeper mind that the thought is not decoration, but lived significance. Cold words vanish quickly. You do not need ecstasy. Relief is enough. A small inward certainty can outlast a dramatic declaration that you do not believe. Small flames survive. At bedtime, say inwardly that the desired condition is established. Then feel what would naturally be present if it were true: gratitude, ease, dignity, freedom, or quiet assurance. Do not chase the feeling, let it warm you. Gratitude is especially potent because it assumes reception. Anxious asking says the good is absent. Quiet thanks says its reality has already touched you. Pleading reaches outward. Gratitude settles inward. You may notice the old argument returning. It will present evidence, history, and predictions. Do not wrestle it beside the ember. Return softly. The ancient work is not domination, it is guardianship. You protect the chosen impression from the winds of contradiction until sleep receives it. You are the guardian of the living ember. That identity changes your practice. A guardian does not scream at fire to burn. A guardian tends what is present, removes what smothers it, and remains near enough to notice its warmth. Your attention becomes devotion. Night after night, the accepted idea becomes familiar. Familiarity reduces inner resistance, and reduced resistance makes corresponding behavior more natural. Soon you speak differently without rehearsing it. You choose differently. The change may first appear ordinary. You pause before reacting. You recognize an opportunity you once ignored, or take an action fear once delayed. The ember is spreading. Do not demand spectacle. A living fire begins quietly. Its first evidence is often the disappearance of an old compulsion that once seemed inseparable from you. Silence holds power. At this very moment, you can stop using prayer to report what is missing. You can offer your subconscious a felt reality worthy of preservation. Accept it gently, give thanks, and release the strain. Then let sleep come. Tonight the darkness is not empty. It is the sacred quiet in which your chosen impression remains undisturbed. Gathering warmth beneath awareness. You guard it until guarding is no longer needed. What will you feed before sleep? Which reality will receive your warmth? What then carries a quiet bedtime image from a momentary spark into an enduring inner command? At the edge of sleep, the loudest voice in your mind begins to lose the microphone. The voice that judges, compares, interrupts, and demands. Proof is still present, but its volume is falling. Something else becomes audible. All day, your conscious mind filters the signals moving through you. It rejects what conflicts with familiar beliefs, even when those beliefs cause the suffering you want to escape. Familiarity often outranks freedom, then drowsiness arrives. Your attention narrows, the outer world recedes, and deliberate reasoning becomes less dominant. The guard does not vanish. It simply stops challenging every impression that approaches the deeper levels of your mind. This is the threshold. During the transition from wakefulness into non-REM sleep, measurable brain activity shifts from relaxed alpha rhythms towards slower theta activity. At the same time, your conscious responsiveness to the environment decreases. Science is only beginning to glimpse what older mind teachings approached through disciplined inner observation. The change is not merely poetic. Your receiving conditions are changing. The noise weakens. Joseph Murphy recommends entering a relaxed, drowsy state before contemplating a desired condition. His reason is simple. An idea can be impressed more deeply when conscious contradiction is no longer shouting over it. The waking mind debates. the drowsy mind receives. Yet this does not mean every sentence whispered near sleep becomes reality. Your subconscious is not a helpless machine, and sleep is not a magical broadcasting device. A weak, confused signal remains weak and confused. The frequency matters. When you drag a complicated speech into bed, you keep the analytical mind employed. It must remember the wording, inspect the logic, and measure whether anything is happening. The very effort meant to deepen the impression can prevent its reception. Effort creates static. A brief statement passes through more easily because it can be repeated without waking the machinery of analysis. It remains stable. Each repetition carries the same impression on the same inner frequency. Consider the difference between a long declaration filled with desperate promises and a quiet phrase such as, "I am becoming secure within myself." The first may contain more words, yet the second may carry more signal. Simplicity concentrates power. William Walker Atkinson treats concentrated attention as the force that strengthens one mental impression above its competitors. Your mind contains countless signals, but attention feeds the one you hold steadily. What you attend to intensifies. This is why distracted repetition produces little movement. Your lips may form a chosen sentence while your attention broadcasts fear, resistance, and disbelief. The spoken words travel in one direction, while the emotional frequency travels in another. The deeper mind hears both. Words announce, feeling confirms. If you repeat, "Everything is perfect," while your whole body tightens against the statement, an inner counter-argument rises immediately. You have not created reception. You have created interference. Believability opens the channel. Your chosen statement does not need to describe the grandest future you can imagine. It needs to feel close enough that your mind does not instantly reject it. A believable signal enters farther than an extravagant claim surrounded by inner protest. Start where resistance softens. "I am completely fearless" may trigger every memory of fear. "I am learning to feel safe" may pass beneath that reaction because it honors movement rather than demanding a false conclusion. The first sentence commands, the second invites. This distinction is subtle, but it changes everything. Your subconscious responds less to theatrical force than to repeated impressions carrying emotional credibility. It receives what feels inwardly coherent. Truth has a tone. Charles Haanel emphasizes stillness and sustained concentration as the conditions that give a mental ideal clarity and force. Stillness is not emptiness. It is the reduction of competing signals. Concentration selects the station. When your body grows quiet, your attention stops scattering into 100 unfinished concerns. You hold one chosen impression long enough for it to become distinct. Clarity is born from continuity. Stay with it. Why does one thought disappear while another shapes your behavior? Why does one nightly phrase feel empty while another follows you into morning? Why does one image dissolve while another becomes an inner expectation? The answer is reception. A signal gains influence when attention, emotion, imagery, and lowered resistance converge. Remove attention and the signal weakens. Remove emotional credibility, and the words remain cold. Remove repetition, and competing frequencies return. This is the real mechanism hidden beneath mystical language. Sleep itself does not transmit your desire into some automatic universe. The useful moment is the transition. When external input recedes and your habitual analysis loosens its grip, you become more receptive. Murphy's method rests upon this condition. You relax, hold the desired outcome as already becoming real, feel its emotional meaning, and release the strain of forcing it. Then you return to the same impression night after night. Repetition stabilizes frequency. This is not begging. Begging broadcasts absence because it keeps the desired condition far away. Quiet acceptance broadcasts participation because you begin to feel the condition from within. Desperation reaches outward. Conviction settles inward. Even gratitude can change the signal. When you offer thanks as though the desired quality is already unfolding, you stop rehearsing the feeling of deprivation. The words matter less than the inward position they create. You tune toward receiving, but gratitude cannot be counterfeit. If thank you feels impossible, soften it until it becomes honest. You might feel grateful for one moment of calm, one glimpse of courage, or one willingness to begin again. A true ember carries heat. Your task is not to overpower your subconscious. Force increases contradiction. Your task is to offer a clear impression under conditions where it can be contemplated without immediate conflict. You lower the static. Imagine choosing the statement, "I trust myself more each day." As drowsiness deepens, you repeat it slowly. You do not argue for it or search your past for evidence against it. You let it sound. Then you add a simple inner picture that agrees with the words. You see yourself responding calmly in a familiar situation. The image is brief, intimate, and emotionally possible. No spectacle is needed. The picture gives form to the frequency. The feeling gives it weight. Repetition gives it familiarity, and familiarity gradually changes what your deeper mind treats as normal. Normal becomes automatic. This is how a chosen impression begins to compete with an old pattern. The old pattern has been transmitted for years through repeated thought, emotional reaction, and remembered imagery. It sounds convincing because you have heard it so often. Frequency became identity. Now you reverse the process without violence. You do not wrestle the old signal through the night. You strengthen another signal until the former one no longer dominates the channel. Attention offers interpretation. Intellect maps oceans. You are not the helpless receiver of every inherited message. You are the transmitter of chosen impressions. Your authority begins the moment you decide which inner signal deserves repetition. That choice is sacred. Do not measure the practice every few seconds. Measurement reactivates effort and pulls you back toward analysis. Send the impression gently, then allow drowsiness to carry you beyond the need to supervise it. Release completes reception. Some nights the words will feel vivid. Other nights they will barely remain in awareness before sleep arrives. Consistency matters more than intensity because the deeper pattern is formed through repeated contact. Return tomorrow night and notice what begins during the day. A different response may appear before you consciously remember the nightly statement. A calmer impulse may interrupt an old reaction. That is the signal returning. Atkinson's concentrated attention selects it. Hanel's stillness clarifies it. Murphy's drowsy contemplation helps it pass with less conscious contradiction. You provide the frequency. Tonight, choose one concise statement that your inner world can receive without revolt. Let it carry enough truth to feel possible and enough emotion to matter. Repeat it at the threshold right now, without strain. Then become still. The sleeping giant within you is not awakened by noise. It stirs when one clear frequency is sustained beyond the reach of habitual interruption. Your final waking impression becomes an invitation carried into silence. Send it carefully, but a signal does not transform you merely because it is sent. It must be received in the language the deeper mind understands. You do not experience everything before you. You experience what your inner lens permits you to see. An entire field of possibility can stand before you, flooded with light, while your attention selects only a narrow portion. That selection feels like reality. It is not deception. It is the quiet mechanism by which your mind prevents every sound, color, memory, and sensation from overwhelming you at once. Something must be emphasized and something must fade. Your lens decides. Tonight, as you move towards sleep, that lens becomes more receptive to the images you repeatedly place before it. What you dwell upon begins to influence what receives light after waking. This is subtle. A subconscious shift does not require reality to bend magically. It can begin when you notice a choice you once ignored, remember a strength you once dismissed, or interpret a difficulty through a steadier frame. The world remains present. Your selection changes. Science is only beginning to glimpse this through the brain's selective attention systems. Your brain prioritizes certain sensory information while filtering other information, which is why expectations and goals affect what you consciously notice. You already know this. When you become interested in a certain subject, signs of it seem to appear everywhere. They were often there before. Your attention simply had no instruction to illuminate them. Instruction changes perception. A fearful expectation directs the lens toward threat. A constructive expectation directs it toward useful openings, supportive evidence, and actions that might carry you forward. The fearful mind scans. The directed mind selects. Neither lens creates every condition it sees, but each lens influences which conditions gain emotional weight, which memories become available, and which next step appears reasonable. That is the mechanism. James Allen teaches that sustained thought shapes character. He does not reduce your whole life to a passing mood, nor does he claim every circumstance reveals your entire inner nature. His claim goes deeper. Thought rehearsed becomes tendency. Tendency expressed becomes character. Character then influences what you create, what you tolerate, what you refuse, and what you repeatedly encounter. Your inner lens gains a pattern. If you continually imagine yourself as powerless, attention begins gathering evidence for powerlessness. A delayed answer becomes rejection, a mistake becomes identity, a closed path becomes proof that every path is closed, the lens darkens, Yet when you repeatedly hold an image of calm capability, different details receive light. You notice the unfinished task instead of declaring final defeat. You remember that you have recovered before, then behavior shifts. This is where imagination becomes practical. The chosen image makes certain responses more accessible because your nervous system has encountered them inwardly before the moment of choice arrives. Repetition lowers resistance. You picture yourself speaking clearly, and clarity becomes easier to reach. You imagine remaining steady during tension, and steadiness becomes more available when tension appears. The image is rehearsal, but most of this remains hidden because attention moves faster than conscious explanation. You notice the result without seeing the selection that produced it. Why does one possibility glow while another disappears? Why does an old fear seem more convincing than present evidence? Why can a repeated image alter what feels available tomorrow? The answer lives in the lens. What receives repeated attention gains contrast. It becomes easier to retrieve, easier to believe, and easier to connect with the choices appearing before you. What receives no light recedes. Christian D. Larson insists that attention be withdrawn from the unwanted and placed upon the constructive quality you intend to develop. This does not mean denying what is wrong. Denial closes the eyes. Direction adjusts the lens. You can recognize fear without feeding it. You can acknowledge a setback without making it the center of your identity. You can see danger clearly while still illuminating courage, judgment, and the next useful act. That distinction protects you. Constructive expectation is not a command to falsify evidence. Expectation can bias interpretation, so your practice must remain open to facts, correction, and honest feedback. Fantasy rejects evidence. Vision learns from it. If you expect success, you do not call every warning negative. You examine the warning, adjust your behavior, and continue with greater precision. The light remains clear. A distorted lens makes every event confirm the image it already holds. A disciplined lens allows reality to refine the image without surrendering the direction. This is mature creation. Troward warns that creative mental power must follow a clear principle. Contradictory assumptions scatter the light. You cannot steadily illuminate strength while secretly worshipping helplessness. Confusion diffuses power. If your conscious words declare confidence while your private imagery rehearses humiliation, the deeper repetition often wins. It has received more emotion, more attention, and more nights of unchallenged exposure. Your lens follows intensity. This is why the threshold of sleep matters. The outer world grows quiet, and the usual demands release their grip. Your attention is no longer pulled through 100 competing impressions. The light turns inward. At that threshold, choose a simple image consistent with the character you intend to embody. See the behavior, not merely the reward. Make it concrete. If you seek confidence, picture yourself taking the call, entering the room, or finishing the difficult work. Feel the steadiness in your posture. Hear your own voice remaining measured. Then let it settle. Do not force excitement. A quiet image repeated with sincerity can direct the lens more effectively than frantic words, spoken against an inner current of disbelief. Gentleness penetrates. The sleeping giant within you does not awaken through strain. It awakens through coherent instruction. Clear imagery gives attention a direction it can continue following after conscious effort becomes still. Sleep deepens the impression. Then morning arrives, and the world may look almost unchanged. This is where you must understand the secret. The first evidence may not be a dramatic event. It may be a detail. You notice the message worth answering. You remember the promise you made to yourself. You pause. Before repeating the reaction that once seemed automatic, light touches choice. That pause matters more than spectacle. Within it, the inner image becomes visible behavior. The imagined character steps into an actual moment and makes a different selection. You become consistent. Allen's teaching comes alive here. Character is not formed by admiration alone. It forms when sustained thought enters conduct, and conduct begins shaping the conditions you permit and produce. Thought selects, character acts. A useful inner image therefore asks something of you after waking. It guides your hand toward the work, your voice toward honesty, and your attention toward the opportunity that requires participation. Otherwise, it is decoration. You are not the helpless object of every impression. You are the illuminator of possibility. Hold that identity carefully. The illuminator does not pretend darkness is absent. The illuminator brings enough light to reveal a path through it. The reaction says nothing can change. The response finds what can be done. Karma echoes motion. The creator directs. Each night your repeated imagery polishes the lens. Each morning your choices reveal whether the image has entered character. This connection cannot remain vague. It must become lived. Starting now, give your subconscious an image worthy of repetition. Let it be honest enough to face facts, clear enough to guide attention, and practical enough to become action. Then release it into sleep. Your outer life does not need to transform before you begin seeing differently. You see differently, act differently, and gradually stop creating or tolerating what belongs to the former image. The light moves first, yet perception is only the doorway. Beyond it, a deeper mystery waits. How a repeated image becomes a response that feels natural. Your future is being woven from repetitions too small to feel important. A thought passes through you tonight, almost unnoticed, yet it may become part of the character that answers tomorrow. That is the hidden mechanism. You do not change through a single declaration. You change when the same inner thread passes repeatedly through thought, feeling, rehearsal, and action until the pattern holds without effort. At first it feels deliberate. You must remember the thought. You must summon the feeling and interrupt the old response before it completes itself. Then something shifts. The new response begins arriving earlier. It requires less force. What once felt unnatural starts to feel familiar, and what feels familiar is soon accepted by your subconscious as normal. This is how character forms. James Allen saw repeated thought crystallizing into habit. He understood that thought does not remain sealed inside you. Through repetition, it becomes disposition, conduct, and eventually outward circumstance. The thread becomes visible. You think with patience, then speak with patience. You rehearse courage, then take a courageous step. Each repetition passes through another part of your life, binding the inner conviction to an outer expression. Thought alone begins the weave. Feeling gives it texture. Action tightens it into place. Every lesson serves awakening. Even a small response matters when it agrees with the pattern you are creating. The calm refusal, the completed task, the honest sentence, and the restrained reaction all confirm who you are becoming. The old pattern also formed this way. It was not placed inside you by a single moment. It gained strength because certain thoughts, emotions, and reactions kept meeting each other. Repetition joined them. An anxious thought called forth a familiar feeling. That feeling invited a familiar behavior. The behavior then seemed to prove the original thought, so the same thread passed through you again. The weave grew tighter. Now you reverse the process, not by fighting every strand, but by repeatedly adding another. You introduce a thought that belongs to the character you choose, and you carry that thought into feeling and conduct. Alchemy transforms burden. Night invites dreaming. This is why nightly practice matters. As sleep approaches, outer demands recede, and you can present the subconscious with a simpler pattern than the one scattered across the day. Calmly see the response. Quietly feel its truth. Let the inner scene become familiar enough that your mind no longer treats it as foreign. But do not stop there. Mental rehearsal prepares the response, yet waking action confirms it. If you rehearse confidence at night but surrender every opportunity by day, the thread remains loose. Wattles is clear about this. Constructive thought does not excuse ineffective action. Inner conviction and corresponding conduct belong together because the inward pattern seeks completion through what you actually do. Belief directs. Action secures. You need not perform something dramatic. You only need to give the new pattern physical evidence. A single aligned choice tells your subconscious that the rehearsal is not fantasy but instruction. The distinction is decisive. Imagination without action remains unfinished. Action without inner direction repeats whatever pattern already dominates. When thought and behavior agree, the weave begins to hold. Science is only beginning to glimpse this through neuroplasticity. Repeated patterns of thought and behavior strengthen associated neural pathways, often summarized in the phrase that neurons firing together wire together. Your repetition has structure. When you think a certain thought while feeling a certain emotion and choosing a related action, those elements become associated. The response begins to travel with increasing ease because you have practiced the entire sequence. You are training familiarity. Atkinson presents mental development as the result of exercise and repetition. A faculty strengthens through use, and your chosen response becomes more available each time you call upon it. Use gives strength. You do not become composed by admiring composure. You become composed by repeatedly returning to it during the exact moments when agitation invites the old reaction. The old thread pulls. You choose another. Perhaps you fail to choose it completely. Your voice rises before you notice. Fear closes your body, or delay carries you halfway back into yesterday's behavior. Progress remains. A contradictory moment does not tear apart everything you have woven. Habit changes through accumulated repetitions, not flawless performance. The next aligned response continues the work. Perfection demands purity. Practice creates continuity. This releases you from the old trap. You no longer interpret one mistake as proof that nothing has changed, because you understand that the subconscious learns through frequency. One moment is a strand. Repetition becomes character. Why does calm repetition outlast emotional force? Why does a modest nightly practice reshape you more deeply than a rare dramatic effort? Why does the smallest aligned action carry such power? Because intensity is not consistency. A powerful declaration may flood you with emotion, but if it is never repeated, it remains isolated. A quiet suggestion returned to each night keeps entering the weave until resistance no longer recognizes it as an intruder. Calmness can penetrate deeper. You are not trying to shock the subconscious. You are teaching it what belongs. The lesson becomes natural because it arrives without strain again and again. This is patient power. Suppose you choose the thought, "I meet pressure with steadiness." At night, you do not merely repeat the words. You feel the steadiness, rehearse the response, and allow your breathing and inner voice to agree. Morning brings confirmation. When pressure appears, you pause before replying. That pause may last only 2 seconds, but it carries the nightly thread into waking behavior. Your subconscious receives an unmistakable message. This pattern now governs action. The thought becomes embodied. Allen's insight reaches its full consequence here. Cultivated thoughts become habits, and habits contribute to the conditions surrounding you because they alter what you notice, tolerate, attempt, and persist in doing. Your circumstances then answer character. Not instantly, not magically. They answer through the countless decisions that your automatic nature makes before conscious debate has time to begin. The pattern chooses quickly. When steadiness becomes automatic, you speak differently under pressure. When worthiness becomes automatic, you stop consenting to what diminishes you. When disciplined attention becomes automatic, your hours cease leaking into old distractions. Your world meets another you. Yet the transformation is not imposed from outside. It has been woven through repeated agreement between your inward rehearsal and outward behavior. You participated in every strand. The old identity says, "This is simply how I am." The awakened identity says, "This is what I have repeatedly practiced." Identity is not a prison, it is a pattern. You are the weaver of automatic character. That does not mean you control every event. It means you cultivate the responses that increasingly arise before fear, hesitation, or habit can reclaim the moment. Reaction obeys the past. Character embodies practice. Tonight, choose a thread simple enough to repeat. Do not reach for 10 changes at once, because divided attention produces a loose and confused design. Keep it clear. Choose the thought that belongs to your desired character. Join it with the feeling that makes it believable. Rehearse the behavior that expresses it. Tomorrow, confirm it. If the first opportunity passes, use the second. If the old response appears, do not crown it as your identity. Add the new strand as soon as awareness returns. Return without drama. This is how the sleeping giant awakens. Not through a violent inner performance, but through a pattern repeated until it no longer needs to be commanded. The command becomes inclination. At this very moment, the next strand is already in your hands. What you calmly repeat before sleep can meet what you courageously enact after waking, and together they form the character that acts naturally. Soon, effort becomes instinct. Now the mechanism is clear. The next revelation is exactly what you should do when the room is dark and sleep is approaching. Tonight you will plant only one seed because a crowded garden cannot reveal what has taken root. Your subconscious does not need more wishes. It needs one clear impression given gently when the surface mind grows quiet. Most will miss this. They carry the entire day into bed, then wonder why nothing changes beneath the soil. They rehearse unfinished conversations, unpaid debts, imagined disasters, and 10 competing desires. The inner garden receives everything. It cannot choose for you. So tonight you choose, not 5 qualities, not 3 outcomes. One living state enters the soil. Perhaps you choose calm. Perhaps confidence, forgiveness, or disciplined action calls to you. The particular seed matters less than the sincerity with which you select it. Choose what feels necessary now. Harnell understood the hidden cost of divided attention. He taught that a definite ideal gathers your inner force, while scattered aims weaken concentration. A garden planted without order becomes tangled, even when every seed appears desirable. Attention nourishes. Distraction starves. This is the first law of your nightly work. You do not ask the deeper mind to transform every corner of your life before morning. You give it one direction and allow that direction to deepen. The seed must be definite. Why does one desire feel too small? Why does your mind keep adding conditions? Why are you afraid to trust a single seed? Because the waking mind worships quantity. It believes more effort produces more results, so it piles demand upon demand. But the subconscious responds most deeply to clarity, repetition, and feeling. Force belongs to daylight, receptivity belongs to night. Once you select the quality, shape it into one present tense sentence. Keep the sentence between 6 and 12 words, so it remains simple enough to follow you into drowsiness. It must name an embodied state, not a distant possibility. Make it alive. I meet tomorrow with calm and capable attention carries 9 clear words. It does not beg for calm. It inhabits calm now. That difference changes everything. Do not say that you will someday become confident. Someday has no roots. Say, I speak and act with quiet, grounded confidence. The garden receives presence. Avoid sentences built around what you no longer want. I am not afraid still places fear in the soil. Name what replaces fear, and let the desired quality occupy the whole sentence. The old pattern resists, the new pattern receives. Larson repeatedly directs attention toward the quality you intend to develop. Yet attention alone is incomplete. You also cultivate the inward feeling that the quality already belongs to you. This is not pretending. You are giving the seed its natural atmosphere. Calm grows more readily when your body tastes calm. Forgiveness takes root when your chest loosens and the remembered wound no longer controls your breathing. Feeling waters the sentence. This feeling need not become dramatic. You do not need to manufacture excitement or summon a perfect vision. A quiet bodily recognition is enough. Softness is enough. Before getting into bed, write your sentence once. Use plain words that your mind accepts without argument. If the sentence sounds inflated, reduce it until it feels steady and believable. Truth enters quietly. Then leave the paper nearby. You are not studying it. You are marking your selection, as a gardener marks the place where something valuable has been planted. Now enter the bed. Let your head settle into the pillow and permit the mattress to carry your weight. Your task is not to force sleep. Your task is to stop interfering with its arrival. Begin with your face. Release the small muscles around your eyes. Let your jaw hang loose and allow your tongue to rest. Soften the forehead as though every unfinished thought is sliding out of it. Then descend slowly. Relax the neck, shoulders, arms, and hands. Feel the chest become unguarded, the abdomen soften, and the hips grow heavy. Continue through your thighs, knees, calves, ankles, and feet. Nothing must perform. Your body is the garden at dusk. Daylight effort withdraws, surface movement quiets, and the deeper processes continue without supervision. You are preparing the soil by becoming still. Lengthen the exhale gently. Do not drag the breath or count with strain. Allow each outward breath to last slightly longer than the inward breath. The body reads that soft exhale as permission to release its watch. No battle remains. If tension returns, soften the area again. If thoughts appear, let them pass without uprooting them. You are not required to empty the mind before planting. Perfection is unnecessary. Joseph Murphy recommends a brief constructive phrase repeated gently in a relaxed state. He points toward the threshold between wakefulness and sleep, when analytical resistance fades and suggestion can enter more directly. Strained mental effort closes this opening. Gentleness keeps it open. When drowsiness begins, bring forward your sentence. Repeat it inwardly, slowly enough to feel each phrase without dissecting it. Let it move through you like a quiet instruction already being obeyed. Do not chant mechanically. If your sentence names calm, feel your shoulders displaying calm. If it names confidence, feel your breathing carrying confidence. If it names forgiveness, feel the inner grip relaxing now. Larson's insight becomes practical here. You are not merely naming the quality, you are cultivating the felt sense of already possessing it. The sentence names, feeling nourishes. Repeat the words for several minutes, but never turn the repetition into labor. Murphy compares this kind of suggestion to a lullaby because its power comes through ease, rhythm, and acceptance. You are soothing the conscious guard, not defeating it. The gate opens softly. At some point, the words may blur. Let them. Their fading does not mean the practice has failed. It means drowsiness is carrying the seed below ordinary thought. Do not wake yourself. This is where many disturb the soil. They check whether calm feels stronger, whether the subconscious has accepted the sentence, or whether sleep is approaching fast enough. Their inspection becomes another demand. Checking digs it up. After several minutes, stop deliberately. Release the sentence before impatience changes its tone. Let silence complete what repetition began. Then sleep. The creature demands proof. The creator permits growth. The anxious mind keeps digging while the deeper mind works unseen. Trust is part of planting. If sleep does not arrive immediately, remain comfortable and return to the relaxed body, not to anxious repetition. You may use the sentence again only if it feels gentle. Never wield it against yourself. Force hardens the soil. Continue with the same chosen sentence across successive nights. The old New Thought writers understand consistency as accumulated direction. Murphy often recommends a sustained period, commonly described as 21 nights, because repeated impressions establish a familiar inner pattern, yet counting can become control. The calendar supports you, but it does not command the garden. Missing a night does not destroy the seed. Resume without blame because shame plants its own instruction. Discipline returns. Punishment recoils. You may notice subtle changes before dramatic ones. Your tone becomes steadier. A familiar trigger loses some of its authority, or tomorrow's necessary action feels easier to begin. Notice without clutching. These movements are early shoots. Do not compare them with another life or demand that they grow faster. Your attention belongs to the quality itself, not to constant measurement. You are the night gardener. You select what enters. You prepare the soil through bodily quiet, give the seed a concise sentence, and nourish it with the feeling of fulfillment. Then you withdraw your hands. That withdrawal is sacred. Tonight choose one quality and write one present tense sentence of 6 to 12 words. Relax from face to feet, lengthen the exhale, and repeat the sentence until its meaning feels more real than the effort of saying it. Then stop. Let sleep receive it. Right now, your deeper mind is closer than the next breath, waiting beneath the noise that daylight teaches you to mistake for identity. You are not the restless thought inspecting the ground. You are the night gardener who knows when to plant and when to leave the soil undisturbed. The darkness is ready. A sentence can enter the soil, but an image is what teaches the seed the shape of its flowering. The subconscious is persuaded less by a distant promise than by a moment that feels as if it has already happened. A promise waits somewhere beyond the horizon, but a completed moment enters like a tide already touching the shore. The veil lifts here. Before sleep, your ordinary clock begins to loosen its grip. The day no longer demands answers, and tomorrow has not yet begun making claims upon you. Between those hours, another timing appears. The inner tide rises. Most people will never hear this. They carry their desires into sleep as unfinished arguments, repeating what they lack and wondering why morning returns the same verdict. They rehearse absence, then call the result fate. You will rehearse completion. The scene must be brief because the subconscious does not require a long performance. It needs a clear impression, accepted without strain. 5 to 10 seconds can carry an entire tomorrow. See the notebook closing. Not an imaginary notebook floating before you, but your notebook beneath your own hands. You see one visual detail, the dark blue cover, the final line, or the small crease near the corner. Then you feel your fingers close it, hear the quiet sound. Perhaps it is the soft meeting of the pages. Perhaps a trusted voice says, "You handled that well." The words are simple because completion is simple. You are already there. Joseph Murphy teaches that an imaginal scene, accepted with the feeling of fulfillment, becomes a focused impression upon the subconscious. The words alone do not persuade. The feeling carried by them does. Cold repetition counts time. Felt completion turns it. This feeling need not be dramatic. You do not need trembling, tears, light, heat, or a mysterious sensation moving through your body. A quiet inner click is enough. The clock has struck. You know the feeling of placing something down because it is finished. You know the difference between hoping a task will end and closing the cover after it has ended. Bring that difference into the scene. Hope reaches forward. Fulfillment settles inward. This is where many lose the tide. They try to force a great emotional wave, then become alert from the effort. They measure every sensation and keep checking whether the subconscious has received the message. Do not check. A seed of completion enters most deeply when your conscious guard has become drowsy. Murphy identifies this threshold before sleep as especially receptive, because the debating mind is no longer standing watch over every suggestion. The inner clock is changing shifts. Let it happen. Begin only after your body has softened into the bed. Let the room remain as it is, with no demand that the night feels sacred or unusual. Your power does not depend upon atmosphere. Clarity matters more. Enter the scene from inside your own eyes. Do not watch yourself closing the notebook as if you were studying another figure from across the room. Feel the cover beneath your hand and hear the sound from where your ears would hear it. First person persuades. Add one quiet feeling of completion. Not excitement about what might occur, but calm recognition that the essential thing is done. The tide is no longer approaching, it has arrived. Now loop the scene gently. Let those 5 or 10 seconds pass, return and pass again. 3 to 5 times is enough to give the impression shape without turning it into labor. Gentleness is authority. The anxious mind repeats because it fears being ignored. The convinced mind repeats because it enjoys what is already accepted. One pushes against the clock, the other moves with the tide. Know the difference. When effort begins returning, release the scene. Do not improve it, expand it, or search for a stronger ending. Allow sleep to take the impression below the surface, then stop. Murphy's teaching is not begging disguised as spirituality. It is deliberate inward acceptance, followed by trust. You present the fulfilled condition, feel its quiet reality, and cease interfering. Release completes the act. The conscious mind wants proof before surrender. The subconscious receives direction through what you repeatedly accept as real. Doubt demands evidence. Conviction establishes a pattern. Sleep carries it deeper. Science is only beginning to glimpse how states near sleep affect memory, emotional learning, and mental consolidation. Yet the old inner teachings already recognize the practical doorway. What you feel and rehearse before sleep does not simply vanish. It joins the hidden movement of tomorrow. But night is not enough. Wallace D. Wattles pairs sustained vision with efficient present action. The inward conviction gives direction, while conduct gives it an earthly counterpart. Vision sets the clock. Action answers when it strikes. This is crucial. You do not awaken and demand that the whole world instantly resemble your scene. You awaken and take one action that agrees with it. The action is selected before sleep, so morning does not negotiate it away. Make it specific. If your scene contains the completed notebook, your waking action might be writing 1 page before noon. If you hear, "You handled that well," your action might be making the call you have postponed. The step need not be large, it must agree. The dreamer waits for conditions. The rehearsal master conditions conduct. You are the rehearsal master of tomorrow. That identity changes your morning. You no longer scan the horizon for a miracle before moving. You become the first quiet sign that the tide has turned. Act within 24 hours. This time boundary keeps the inner impression connected to lived behavior. Delay tells the subconscious that the scene is fantasy. Timely action tells it that the new rhythm governs your hands. The clock answers. After acting, record the action itself. Write that you made the call, opened the document, walked for 15 minutes, declined the old invitation, or completed the first page. Do not demand an immediate external reward. Record participation, not applause. Results have their own tides. Some arrive visibly, while others first rearrange decisions, attention, timing, and relationships beneath the surface. If you judge too early, you interrupt what has only begun moving. Troward understood this distinction. He emphasizes forming a clear mental conception while allowing its means of expression to unfold through lawful and appropriate channels. Your role is not to dictate every route by which fulfillment must arrive. Your role is to hold the conception clearly and meet the next fitting action. Direction is yours. Arrangement is deeper. This does not mean passivity. It means intelligent cooperation. You keep the scene precise, the feeling settled, and the waking action honest, without trying to command every hour on the clock. Control tightens. Cooperation opens. The tide may first appear as a quieter response to an old trigger. It may appear as a useful idea while washing your face, an unexpected message, or the courage to finish what once intimidated you. These beginnings are easy to dismiss because they rarely announce themselves. Notice them. Your record becomes evidence of alignment rather than a courtroom demanding results. Each entry says that your inner rehearsal and outer conduct are beginning to keep the same time. That agreement builds trust. Trust deepens receptivity. Night after night, avoid changing the scene from impatience. Keep it while it still represents the fulfilled condition clearly. A clock cannot guide you if you reset it every few minutes. Stay with it. If the scene becomes mechanical, restore the sensory detail instead of adding length. Feel the notebook cover again. Hear the trusted voice again, and settle into the small finality of completion. Small is powerful. Then release it before desire becomes strain. Let sleep come naturally, without lying awake to inspect the tide. The deepest movement makes no spectacle at the shore. Your waking action follows. This is how imagination crosses into conduct. The night receives a completed moment, and the day receives a matching deed. Neither replaces the other. They keep time together. Starting now, choose the scene and choose the action before your eyes close. Tomorrow is not an empty hour waiting to happen to you. It is a tide receiving its direction tonight. The first movement is quiet. Will you honor it? Will you act before the old clock resets you? When the tide begins to turn, will you recognize the first signs, or dismiss them because they arrive quietly? Transformation rarely announces itself with thunder. It first appears as a reaction you no longer need to obey. Something touches the old wound, yet the familiar anger does not immediately take command. For one quiet second you remain still. That second matters. You may dismiss it because nothing spectacular happens. There is no blazing dream, no voice in the night, no sudden proof that your entire life has changed. Yet beneath the surface, the stone begins yielding. This is the first sign. The subconscious reveals its changes through your conduct, before your circumstances fully rearrange. You meet the same trigger, but you are no longer entirely the same self meeting it. A pause appears between impact and reaction. The old impulse still rises, but now it waits. That pause is the first clean strike of the sculptor's tool. It creates a space where no space existed before. Within that opening, a different response becomes possible. You do not force it, you notice it. Before, the trigger and the reaction seemed fused together. Criticism became defense. Delay became fear. Discomfort became retreat. You believed these responses were simply you. They never were. They were grooves cut into the stone through repetition. Each old thought struck the same place until a familiar shape appeared. Then you mistook the carving for your identity. Now the tool changes hands. You are the patient sculptor of character. You are not the helpless stone. You are the awareness choosing what remains and what falls away. James Allen understood that character is formed through cultivated thought. What you repeatedly entertain eventually becomes visible in your decisions, your habits, and your manner of meeting difficulty. Thought is hidden at first, but conduct reveals the carving. The fantasy demands fireworks. Character reveals itself quietly. This is why you must stop judging your progress by dramatic sleep experiences. A vivid dream can feel meaningful without changing a single choice. A silent night can reshape you so deeply that tomorrow's old temptation no longer possesses its former weight. The dream impresses, the response proves. You may awaken and remember nothing. Do not assume that nothing happened. The deeper mind does not need to entertain you while it receives a new direction. It works below language. During sleep, repeated impressions enter the softer layers of belief. Yet the evidence appears after waking. In moments that seem ordinary, you recover sooner from disappointment, release an insult more easily, or begin a necessary task without the old internal argument. Notice these moments. The stone does not vanish after a single strike. Small fragments loosen first. Fine dust gathers where the hardened surface once seemed permanent. Old thoughts may still appear. This does not mean the work has failed. Atkinson treats mastery as progressive command over attention and response, not the complete disappearance of unwanted mental activity. An old thought can enter without becoming your ruler. Its arrival is not obedience. This contrast changes what follows. The untrained mind hears an old fear and says, "This is mine." The awakening mind hears the same fear and says, "This is familiar." One identifies with the voice. The other recognizes an echo in the stone. The thought speaks. You need not answer. At first, the old patterns may even seem louder. They sense that your attention is withdrawing, so they demand another hearing. But volume is not authority. Noise is not power. You begin seeing thoughts as marks left by an earlier hand. Some were cut by childhood repetition. Others were carved by humiliation, disappointment, or years of expecting the worst. Yet no mark is sacred. What has been conditioned can be reshaped through a deeper and steadier conditioning. You do not attack the stone in rage. You return patiently to the chosen form. That patience is strength. Why does the pause feel so small? Why do old thoughts still return? Why does true change hide inside ordinary choices? Because the subconscious does not prove itself through spectacle. It proves itself through availability. A response that was once unreachable suddenly stands within reach. Then another shift appears. You begin acting in harmony with your chosen identity without conducting a long debate inside yourself. You speak honestly before fear constructs its defense. You close the door that drains you or open the page you once avoided. The action is small. The meaning is enormous. Previously, every constructive act required persuasion. You had to bargain with yourself, threaten yourself, inspire yourself, and wait for the right emotional weather. Now the better choice begins to feel natural. The stone is yielding. Allen's teaching reaches its practical point here. Changed thought becomes character only when it enters conduct. An affirmation that never touches behavior remains a sound striking the surface without cutting it. Conduct completes thought. You are not searching for perfection. Perfection is a cruel measurement because it treats every old impulse as failure. Progress uses a wiser measure. How quickly you return. The old self collapses, the new self recovers. Perhaps anxiety still visits, but it no longer consumes the entire day. Perhaps anger still flashes, but it does not choose your next 5 actions. Perhaps doubt appears, yet your hands continue the work. That is real mastery. Larson emphasizes poise, constructive feeling, and action from the higher quality you are cultivating. Poise does not mean numbness. It means the disturbance no longer owns the center of you. You feel without surrendering. The stone may tremble beneath the tool, but the sculptor's hand stays steady. Your emotions can move while your direction remains firm. This is how the higher quality becomes embodied. Calm chooses calmly. Courage chooses courageously. You may still feel fear while making the courageous choice. The feeling belongs to the old carving. The choice belongs to the emerging form. Watch the choice. Do not measure this process from hour to hour. A difficult morning can make you believe weeks of inner work have disappeared. It has not. Measure across weeks. Look at emotional recovery, repeated behavior, and growing consistency. Notice whether you return to peace sooner. Notice whether your private choices increasingly agree with the identity you claim. The isolated moment deceives. The pattern tells truth. Omens cannot measure this. Sleep paralysis, tingling sensations, repeating numbers, and vivid images may attract attention, but they do not establish character. The true sign is what you do when the familiar pressure returns. Your life applies pressure deliberately. Pressure reveals which parts remain attached and which parts are ready to fall. A delay shows whether impatience still governs you. A rejection reveals whether your worth still depends on permission. Every encounter serves expansion. Even a relapse can show you where the tool must return. Shame says the unfinished stone is ruined. Awareness says another fragment has become visible. Shame condemns. Awareness continues. Most will never understand this. They will search for instant manifestation while ignoring the changed reaction already appearing within them. They will demand a monument after one night and miss the fine dust gathering at their feet. You know what it means. Each pause is evidence. Each released thought is evidence. Each unforced action aligned with your chosen character is evidence. Let it accumulate. Tonight, you do not need to force a grand result. Place the chosen identity before the subconscious, then rest. Tomorrow, watch how your hand meets the stone. Be patient now. At this very moment, the form within you is not being invented. It is being uncovered through every steadier thought, every cleaner choice, and every response you no longer need to obey. You are still sculpting. And when the old stone finally falls away, who has been waiting underneath it? The power beneath your life was never sleeping. It was waiting for a direction worthy of its strength. Beneath every visible choice, roots are already drinking from impressions you planted long ago. Tonight, you decide what they receive next. Most people never notice this. They keep pruning unwanted behavior while feeding the hidden root that produces it. Then they wonder why the same fear, delay, or self-betrayal returns with another branch. You are going deeper. The sleeping giant within you is not a supernatural stranger. It is your accumulated capacity for habit, imagination, emotional learning, healing support, and automatic action. It is the vast root system beneath your visible life. It remembers repetition. It carries practiced responses into moments when conscious effort is weak. It supports whatever identity you consistently impress upon it, whether that identity was chosen deliberately or absorbed without permission. That changes tonight. You do not need to conquer this giant. A tree does not conquer its roots, and its roots do not rebel against the tree. They receive, organize, and deliver according to what repeatedly enters the soil. Your task is stewardship. Force belongs to fear. Direction belongs to authorship. The immature mind gives an order tonight, sees no branch by morning, and digs up the root in disappointment. The mature mind plants carefully, waters consistently, and allows unseen intelligence to perform its quiet labor. Roots work in darkness. That is why sleep matters. As the noise of the surface settles, the impressions nearest your heart descend without the usual argument. They enter the soil where tomorrow's reactions are prepared. You have experienced this already. A worry carried into sleep can greet you before your feet touch the floor. A wound rehearsed at night can shape the tone of a day that has not yet begun. The root receives. Yet the same law serves freedom. An honest conviction carried gently into sleep can begin reorganizing your inner responses. It may not shout when you awaken, but it starts changing what feels natural. Why does one repeated thought become a reflex? Why does one inner scene begin to shape your choices? Why does the darkness before morning carry such creative weight? Because repetition becomes nourishment. Emotion carries it downward, and expectation tells the root what kind of tree it is sustaining. What enters consistently eventually rises visibly. Thomas Troward saw individual thought as a channel through which a greater creative principle receives direction. You do not manufacture the life force inside the seed. You determine what seed is entrusted to that force. This is sacred responsibility. The creative principle is larger than your surface personality, yet it does not remove your participation. Life supplies the growing power. You supply the pattern repeatedly offered to it. The victim waits, the steward directs. This does not mean blaming yourself for every storm, wound, or circumstance. Blame poisons the soil. Responsibility simply restores your ability to choose what happens next. You can begin humbly. You do not need a flawless mind or an hour of complicated effort. One honest sentence can become the first clean root of a different identity. Choose words you can inhabit. I meet my life with calm strength carries more power when it feels sincere than extravagant claims your whole body rejects. The subconscious responds to repeated coherence, not theatrical pressure. Keep it living. Then give that sentence an embodied scene. See one small moment in which the new identity is already natural. Your shoulders relaxed, your voice steady, your hands completing what you once avoided. Let the scene have warmth. Do not strain. You are not trying to hypnotize a hostile force. You are teaching your roots the shape of the tree now emerging. The lesson deepens through tenderness, clarity, and return. Charles Hannell taught that sustained inner order gradually establishes mastery over scattered mental habits. Concentration, in this sense, is not tension. It is the refusal to keep watering every passing weed. Scattered attention feeds confusion. Ordered attention feeds direction. You may still notice old thoughts. Their appearance is not failure. It is evidence of roots once watered frequently. You do not have to wrestle every old branch to the ground. Withdraw nourishment. Return to your chosen impression not with panic, but with the quiet authority of someone tending living soil. Consistency becomes your command. This is how mastery grows. At first, the new sentence may feel unfamiliar. The scene may flicker, and your attention may wander toward yesterday's evidence. Bring it back without self-punishment. A root is not strengthened by rage. It is strengthened by contact repeated steadily enough to become a pathway. Night after night, the unfamiliar becomes recognizable, then recognizable becomes natural, but the work does not end in bed. Wallace D. Wattles joins constructive faith with present action, refusing to turn inner transformation into an escape from practical life. Your morning action must agree with your nighttime planting, otherwise you divide yourself. The inner word says growth, while the visible act says retreat. Roots receive mixed nourishment, and the tree spends its strength holding opposite directions. Faith imagines, action confirms. This aligned action can be small. Send the message, drink the water, open the page, speak the boundary, or rise when you promised yourself you would rise. The act gives physical agreement to the impression. Now the whole tree participates. Your sentence names the identity. Your scene gives it emotional form. Your action allows it to enter the visible world. Nothing elaborate is required. What matters is agreement among thought, feeling, and conduct. When these point in one direction, the root receives a clear instruction. Most people keep waiting for intensity. They believe transformation must arrive as a dramatic night, a perfect vision, or an overwhelming certainty. But trees are not crowned through drama. They grow by fidelity. The greatest changes often begin beneath notice. A calmer response appears where panic once ruled. A useful action happens before the old excuse can assemble itself. Soon your life feels different. Not because another force invaded you, but because your accumulated capacity now serves a chosen direction. The giant rises as automatic cooperation. You trained it. This is why humility matters. You are working with a power that stores more than your wishes. It stores your repetitions. It learns from what you rehearse, tolerate, dramatize, and repeatedly embody. The careless mind demands. The trustworthy mind demonstrates. Become trustworthy tonight. Give your deeper nature an impression worthy of multiplication. Do not plant courage before sleep. Rehearse defeat until the final second. Guard the last impression gently. You may hear old branches moving. Memory may present unfinished conversations, imagined disasters, or evidence for the identity you are leaving. Let them pass without feeding their roots. Your chosen sentence remains. Feel it in your breathing. See the simple scene. Know the one action that will make it visible after morning arrives. Then release it. Roots do not need your conscious supervision through the night. They need a clear pattern and the space to receive it. Sleep is not absence. While conscious effort rests, your organism continues sorting, integrating, repairing, and preparing. The same inner capacity that learned old reactions can support new ones. You are giving that capacity a wiser assignment. There is no war here. The old identity weakens through neglect. The new identity strengthens through agreement. You are not the prisoner of the sleeping giant. You are the awakened steward of the sleeping giant. Your crown is not domination. It is responsibility accepted without fear, and it begins now. Before sleep tonight, choose one sentence that is honest enough to trust. Enter one scene that lets your body recognize it, then honor it with one aligned action tomorrow. Return tomorrow night. Let the roots deepen quietly. Let consistency do what force never could. Let the hidden life beneath you prepare a branch strong enough to hold your future. Morning will reveal beginnings. At this very moment, you stand where every lasting change begins, not at the branch, but at the root. Choose the thought you are willing to become, carry it gently into sleep, and let tomorrow meet the one who has already begun. You began beside a river. You listened for the current beneath thought, beneath habit, beneath the noise of the day. You entered that midnight water uncertain of where it might carry you. Now you recognize it. The current was never outside you. It was your subconscious, deep, tireless, receiving every image, every word, every feeling you allowed to sink beneath the surface. And tonight you no longer drift upon it unconsciously. You hold the direction. You are no longer the passenger of inherited patterns. You are the awakened steward of the sleeping giant. You and I are one in this knowing. You are the navigator of the midnight current, the discerning cultivator, the revising architect, the keeper of inner direction, the guardian of the living ember. But you are more. You are the transmitter of chosen impressions, the illuminator of possibility, the weaver of automatic character, the night gardener, the rehearsal master of tomorrow, the patient sculptor of character. You choose what enters. You choose what remains. You choose what becomes you. Say it inwardly. I am the awakened steward. Your subconscious is not your master. It is sacred power awaiting instruction, a fertile depth awaiting seed, a sleeping giant awaiting a worthy command. The root has received the message. Now let the tree reveal it. When you rise, do not search for proof in the distance. Watch your next thought, your next word, your next response. There the invisible root becomes visible branch. There the midnight current enters the daylight world. The listening ends here. The tending begins with you. If this frequency is the one you choose to live within, subscribe, not as a favor but as a pact with the direction you have claimed. And leave a comment as your signature upon that pact. Write the identity you now accept. I am the awakened steward. Let those words descend. Let them take root. Let sleep carry them deeper than effort ever could. The giant within you has heard your voice. The river has accepted your direction. The tree is already turning toward the light. Close your eyes. Release the shore. Your chosen current carries you from this hour.